Hi, I'm John Nixon from Eagle Lake Woodworking. Welcome to part 1 of the video series on how I constructed the Super Sled. The Super Sled's a combination between my original crosscut sled and Wood Magazines Universal Tablesaw Jig. I've combined the features of both jigs into one versatile sled. Let me show you how it's made. What I have here is a 2 foot by 4 foot piece of 1/2 inch plywood from your local big box store. And keep in mind that they're not exactly 2 foot by 4 foot. They're slightly undersized. So I'm going to cut this down to the 36 inches wide by ripping off 11 5/8 on this side. Now that I have the main board cut to size, I'm going to lay out the 4 slots that are used to position hold downs and accessories like a tenon jig or mitering fence. First thing I'm going to do is find the center of the board, and then everything is laid out from that center line. And both sides of the main board are symmetrical, so everything that we do over here, we're going to do over here as well. I'm going to punch a center hole in each of the 8 locations where we'll be drilling a pilot hole to start the slots on the router table. So here at the drill press, I've set up a fence that positions the drill bit 2.5 inches away from the edge. And this is to drill the front set of holes, the holes that are closest to the operator as you're using the fence. With my standard fence removed, I now am positioned to drill holes 6 inches from the back edge. This is the position the crosscut sled would be in when the operator is using it. So these holes are 6 inches from the edge that's furthest away from the operator. And you can see how using a fence on the drill press really helps speed up holes that are the same distance from the edge. All I have to do is move it down, position it from left to right, and the hole will be the exact same distance from the edge. Now that we've drilled the pilot holes, here at the router table, we'll make the slots. Now the first slot is made using a 3/8 inch solid carbide upcut bit, and that will come all the way through the board, from pilot hole to pilot hole. So with the bit set up the proper distance from the fence, we use the bigger hole as a place to start the bit, and then move this through and cut that slot, stopping at the rear hole. Use the same fence setup for the other side, but we've reversed the board and we'll start in the small pilot hole and work our way down to the larger pilot hole. While we have the fence in this position set up for these 2 outside slots, we'll chuck in the 3/4 inch bit and make that shell slot from the bottom. To make the 3/4 inch slot in the bottom, we're going to plunge the board down onto the spinning bit and then move it forward, and then eyeball where to stop when we get down to the end. Now it's only about a 3/16 of an inch deep dado, so it's a pretty shallow plunge. You can see from the bottom we have an area now for a T-bolt to move and be positioned from the top side. And the purpose for drilling the larger hole was to give a spot for the T-bolt to be entered into the slot. So that'll allow us to get accessories on and off easily from the top side of the crosscut sled. Now that we have the 2 outer slots routed, it's time to do the 2 inner slots. Now we have a problem. At the router table, my fence doesn't go deep enough to allow me to ride this piece against the fence and cut this inner slot. But I have a solution. You can use the front edge of your router table as a guide by clamping a board to the underside of the workpiece. So I'm clamping a board at the 1 foot mark, and I'll be able to use this board as a guide, and it'll ride along the front of the router table with the main board centered on the table saw blade. I'm going to make a mark where the left-hand miter slot is. We're going to make a shell dado on the router table to receive the runner that goes in the bottom of the sled, just on the left side. We'll address the right runner a little bit later in the process. So here at the router table, I'm going to use the same method as before. I've clamped a board onto the main fence that's parallel with the dado that we need to make to receive the runner. And that board will ride against the front of the router table and give me a reference to cut that dado. And that dado that we just cut in the bottom will receive our runner. It's made of low friction plastic, and it's a little bit flexible, and that's why we made a dado to receive this runner, because once it's in place it'll stay in that straight line after we screw it in from the bottom. And you can see that I've made one longer than the other. I made a 26-inch and a 22-inch. And the longer one is going to be for the main runner on the left side of the sled. And I left it a little bit long so that you can see where the runner is when you're mounting the sled to the table. It makes it easier to get it into the miter slots. Here at the drill press, we're going to drill countersink holes in the runner material approximately every 2 inches. Now we can attach the main runner in that dado that we made using 5/8 inch screws. So position the runner so that there's a little bit sticking out of the front side of the main board and a little bit sticking out of the back side. You want to tap this all the way along if you have a tight fitting dado, just to make sure that the runner is seated properly in the dado. Okay, it's time to attach the second runner. And the way we do that is I'm going to put some double stick tape on the face of the runner that would contact the bottom of the main board. Okay, now we're going to place the runner in the miter slot and remove the protection to expose the sticky part of the double stick tape. Okay, we're going to line up the runner even with the front of the table saw. And then take the other runner and put it in the slot and lay it down so it contacts that double stick tape. Then we're going to slide it back, and the runner is going to be attached to the sled. And you can see how we've backed out the sled enough where that first screw hole is exposed, and we'll screw one screw into there. So now I'm going to do the same thing to the front side. I'm going to push the sled forward until that runner is exposed out of the back side of the table saw, and I'll get around underneath there and put a screw in the last hole as well. Well, that does it for this part of the video, but I invite you to check out the all-new Eagle Lake Woodworking to see the rest of the videos in this series and videos on other woodworking topics. You can access all parts of the videos in one easy viewer. Check out the photo galleries of in-process work, measured drawings, and finished projects. You can also download files associated with projects. So check it out at www.eaglelakewoodworking.com.